Hi everyone, I'm Dr. John Douillard, and today I want to talk about why we have issues with certain types of food intolerances and why it's so important for us not to just take the food out of our diet and think that we've solved the problem. Because there's long-term implications that we have to look at that I want to talk to you about today. And so here's what we know. People eat wheat, they feel bad, they stop eating wheat. Of course, why would you eat something that makes you feel bad? But then we stop eating dairy and nuts and seeds and grains and legumes and lectins and phytic acids and nightshades. I mean, we have this laundry list of foods that we keep taking out of our diet. We never ask the question, why did we have an issue digesting these foods where for thousands and thousands of years people ate these foods without a problem? And in fact, those foods, albeit harder to digest, provide a level of irritation or stimulation for what's called gut immunity, which is 70% of your body's immune response. So when you take the food out of your diet, and then you keep taking more and more foods out of your diet that are harder to digest, you take away the stimulation that causes gut immunity. And without an immune system, we're in big trouble. I want to talk about some of the science that's shown when people actually go on a gluten-free diet when they don't have to, and some of the issues that come along with that. The science is actually starting to come in suggesting that it might be a really bad idea for us just to pull these foods out of our diet that have been in our diet for thousands, or in wheat's case for that matter, is like millions of years. And I did write a book on it called Eat Wheat, and we found studies that showed that they had gluten in the teeth 3.5 million years ago, ancient humans. So we have to just stop treating the symptoms and think of the long-term, impact. COVID-19 impacts us first through the skin of our respiratory tract and the skin of our gut. Viruses penetrate the epithelial cells. In Ayurvedic medicine, they were never about killing the virus or killing the bug. They're always about supporting the host, supporting the epithelial level, the inner skin. The inner skin of the respiratory tract and the intestinal tract are critical for health, longevity, and immunity. And that relates to the glowing and the health of the outer skin. But the outer skin doesn't matter, but the inner skin really does matter. And that's where we should be putting all of our eggs into that basket. Now, there was a study done with Amish kids who have the lowest rates of asthma in America compared to the Hutterites who have the highest rates of asthma in America. Both are immigrants from a certain part of Switzerland, farming communities. The Amish kids, Amish farmers came in and did it the old-fashioned traditional way, still do. The Hutterites did it the modern way, sterile everything, and they have the highest rates of asthma, and these Amish kids have the lowest rates. They went and they did studies of the dust in the farm, in the barns of the Amish kids who were having, cows as pets and running through and playing in the barns, breathing all this barn dust. And they found that there were certain types of irritants in the barn dust that triggered a respiratory immune response that protected them from asthma. This is called hygiene hypothesis or hormesis. This is something that we know is true. It's an evolutionary thing that happened to us that allowed us to have an immune response for most things. But when your digestive system breaks down, which is why you can't eat these foods, wheat, dairy, nuts, grains, seeds, legumes, phytic acids, lectins, all these things that we're told now we shouldn't eat anymore, all you're doing is taking a hard to digest stuff off your diet, out of your digestive system, and now making it super easy for you to digest, but there's no stimulation for an immune response. There's no ability now for you to detoxify. Your digestive strength is linked to your ability to detoxify. If you can't digest well, you can't detoxify well. So sure, you eat a food, you feel bad, don't eat it. But don't stop there. Fix the real problem. That's why I write so many articles, all for free, on my website at LifeSpa.com about how to strengthen and troubleshoot and diagnose your digestive condition. It's really critically important to do that. So one study on the whole hygiene hypothesis theory, they did like 10,000 kids. They measured their asthma, and it was over 14 different countries in Europe, and they found that the kids who lived in the farming communities who breathed this dust, like the Amish dust, they had 54% lower rates of hay fever, 57% lower risk of amounts of allergies, and 50% of reduction in asthma compared to kids who lived in the cities and in the urban areas. So really, really important. More research has been shown when they compared specifically a gluten-free diet and a diet with gluten in it. And this is based on an article I wrote called The Dangers of a Gluten-Free Diet, where I cite all this research. If you want to go there at LifeSpa.com, check it out. The article I think is really compelling. It really moves the needle for you to understand we can't just take the food out of the diet. You got to fix the problem. And I think that sets us up for all types of immune issues down the road, toxicity issues down the road, because if we can't digest, we don't have an immune response, and we don't have a detox ability with an environment which is loaded with toxins and pollutants which compromise immunity. And that's, now hard science, right? So they did a study with many studies comparing people who ate gluten and people who didn't. And the people who ate gluten compared to people who were gluten-free had significantly more good bugs in their gut, good bacteria in the gut. They had significantly less bad bacteria in their gut than people who were gluten-free. They had significantly more killer T cells. These are all different studies, by the way. More killer T cells than people who were gluten-free. So the people who were gluten-free had less an immune response killer T cell activation than people who were eating gluten. The people who were eating wheat on a regular basis had 4 times less mercury in their blood than people who were gluten-free. And that study is comprehensive. Please go to my website, check out that article, The Dangers of a Gluten-Free Diet, at LifeSpa.com, because it's amazing, right? It's amazing research. 4 times less mercury in their blood than people who were gluten-free. Again, your ability to digest well is linked to your ability to detoxify well. Your ability to digest well is linked to your immune response. They have significantly more killer T cells, more good bugs in their system when they eat wheat than when they don't. The studies show, and these are 2 Harvard studies, over 100,000 people, over 30 years in the making. One study showed that people who ate the most wheat, gluten, had significantly less diabetes risk. Everybody thinks wheat causes diabetes, and there's study after study after study that shows it doesn't do that. Okay, now I'm not talking about refined Wonder Bread, okay? I'm talking about wheat itself. Whole wheat, the whole grain, does not cause diabetes. In fact, it reduces it compared to people who actually are gluten-free. Heart disease, studies, again, a Harvard study, 30 years in the making, 100,000 people plus. People who ate the most wheat had significantly less heart disease than people who were gluten-free. Studies show that people who eat more wheat have lower cholesterol. Other studies show that people who eat wheat, like in the MIND diet, which is 3 servings of grains per day, had 56% reduction in dementia compared to people who were gluten-free, who didn't eat wheat. So the studies are in, right? We can't just throw these foods out of our diet just because we don't feel good eating them. We have to recognize that they are important pieces of the puzzle. Now, I'm a big fan of seasonal eating, where the wheat is harvested in the fall. Amylase, the enzyme to digest wheat, is increasing in your bodies and my body in the fall. And it doesn't increase that enzyme so much in the spring. Guess what? There is no grain as carbohydrates in the fall, in the spring. So our circadian rhythms over thousands of years gave us the enzymes for grains when they were harvested. We don't get that enzyme, in such quantities in the spring. Although that's probably changing because we eat it every day of our life. That's somewhat changing. But the studies show that those enzymes are cyclical, seasonal. We are seasonal beings. So I'm not saying eat wheat every day. I'm not even saying eat wheat necessarily. I'm just saying don't stop. When you have a food intolerance, try to understand what underlying imbalance might be causing that food intolerance, as opposed to just taking this, that, and the other food out of your diet and then setting yourself up for real digestive, real detoxification, and real immune issues down the road. So please check out either my book, Eat Wheat, or just read all my articles. This one, The Dangers of a Gluten-Free Diet, at LifeSpa.com. So please check it out. This is really important stuff. This is why I wrote Eat Wheat, was because I was so concerned that just taking the food out of the diet would just be sweeping a bigger problem under the rug. And now we have some people getting really, impacted negatively from different types of, immune events, and other people not. I'm not saying this is the absolute reason, but I'm saying that Ayurveda was all about prevention, all about understanding how to treat us so we are more resilient in the face of danger. All right, thanks for listening. I'm Dr. Douillard.